Hey, and welcome to this training called How to Elevate Your Brand and Increase Value Within Your Fitness Business by Using Merchandise. I'm here with Jason from Azura Sport. Jason, how are you doing? Thank you for coming all the way down to the studio here. How are you?
Thank you for having me. No, it's a pleasure to be here. It's nice to actually put names to faces, see the team, and I guess get a conversation started that doesn't really get the light of day that it should deserve. So
for sure, yeah.
So to see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many people in the fitness industry try to do merchandise correctly. And Jason and Azura Sport are now official merchandise partners of Fitness Marketing Agency, and there's a very special reason because of that. And we're going to dive into that within this training. So before we jump kind of into the nitty gritty, it would be great just to get a bit of an intro about yourself and kind of what you do in the business, and then we'll go a little bit deeper.
So a bit of background on me. I've come from a graphic design background. So for me, branding is a topic that we were talking about earlier. It's completely interpreted differently by different people. If you go to an advertising agency, it's the amount of impressions you've got. If you go to a graphic design, it would be your logo. If you go to a web design, it would be your webman or how your website works. But for me, I've always looked at branding as a point of a combined set of experiences that people have interacting with a brand or business. So within the fitness industry specifically, it's the amount of touch points you've got in your gym, it's how you've been onboarded, it's that entire process rather than just signing up. And I think in the independent space, that's really, really key, whereas you're competing with some of these massive franchises, national franchises that maybe have less of a brand impact or a personalised brand impact. So I was kind of noticing where branding was maybe slightly falling short within these businesses. And then obviously, I think about 4 or 5 years ago, I did probably what every young guy in the fitness industry who can do some branding did, and I set up a gymwear brand. So we ran that for about a year and a half, I think, and then that kind of flopped. Me and the business partner wanted different things. But during that process, I really found a passion for co-branding and running the influencer schemes and things like that, and just having a real key eye over the branding of the quality of the product that we were doing. And I noticed that co-branding was quite a key element of what we could have done going forward, like going to local dance schools, going to local gyms, going to sports clubs, things like that, and getting a co-branded deal with the product that we could provide to these groups or organisations. And the trouble was, trying to do that in those days, you had to go ahead and, I say in those days, it was only about 4 or 5 years ago, but you would have to go and get huge order quantities. You would be limited on colour, you'd be limited on artwork, you'd be limited on material, and you've got to invest all of this money all of the time, then manage all your orders from all the people, make sure everyone's paid, make sure everyone's got the right size. It's just a minefield, and trying to do that for all these different brands and all these clubs, they almost have to employ someone part-time, or they've got a PA that's just completely, chasing bits of paper around the office to try and get that information right. And I just thought there has to be an easier way. So I left my full-time job at that time, started doing quite a lot of design work with different fitness businesses. One of our longest-standing clients, who actually is a client here at the FMA from MZ9. So they were one of our first clients.
That's Mickey, isn't it?
That's Mickey, yeah. Shout out to Mickey. With them, we kind of initially started looking at just applying their branding onto kit. I think it was for some events they mainly had their first ones going out for. And for them, the idea was that we could just provide this kit in a straightforward and easy process with none of the industry buzzwords that are going to put people off, or industry limitations where, you've got to have X or Y amount of colours, or you've got to have X or Y quantities per SKU. We just took all of that out with MZ9 and just said, here's a design, do you like it? Let's go. And then give them the material, produce the quality product, and get that out. And that worked really, really well. We had quite a few clients that followed that method for the first maybe 6 months. But then they were saying, like Mickey was saying, they wanted us to be able to do more merch without having to take up any more time of theirs. And that's really where the webshop system was born.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but
yeah, no, that's okay,
and
we'll dive into individual elements of what you just said. I think that merchandise has been such a headache for so many fitness business owners in terms of finding the right place, finding the right size. You sell a t-shirt, it's the wrong size, you've got to do a refund, you've got to swap it over. There's so much hassle that it's not worth doing. But from what you do, it's it's a one-stop shop for merchandise in terms of the production,
Yep.
in terms of the sales and the fulfillment of that merchandise, and you do pretty much everything from t-shirts, water bottles, resistance bands, and
bands are in there, yeah.
foam rollers and
Yeah,
mats,
yeah.
and there's probably a whole range of other stuff that you do as well that I've completely forgot to mention. But I think also a question is, what would you say makes you different to anyone else in terms of merchandise? And because again, you don't just make the stuff, right? You also help with fulfillment in terms of the store that you have.
Well, with the store setup is kind of our nuts and bolts. So that is the all-inclusive system, like you've mentioned there. We like to take more of a holistic approach to our clients' merch for them, rather than just being a supplier where, unless you've supplied the right information or you've managed everything your end, you're not going to get the result that you want. So you're completely right. We've got a humongous range of product now, and it is all catered to the fitness industry. That's 4 or 5 years worth.
And it's just the fitness industry, right? You're not just a merch company. You are kind of specifically within sport, wellness.
We
fitness.
are, yeah. Well, that's the point. The idea is that we're not trying to get sidetracked or bogged down with loads of other elements within our industry. There is a lot of potential to do that at some point, but for us, I wanted us to focus on the fitness industry, because within this space at the moment, it's quite noticeable. A lot of places will just go to their local print shop or Sally down the road who likes to cut out some vinyl. And that's great, and that works for some businesses. And if you've got members in your gym that can apply some level of merchandise offering, then that kind of, it is quite nice for the gym to do. But it's very old school, and it doesn't quite get you the level of, efficiency and quality of service that you're trying to get throughout your whole system. And if your brand is really important to you, your brand is your baby. You want somebody that's going to be able to look after that, but you don't want to employ someone full time to try and to manage that. So yeah, you completely hit the nail on the head there. So when you come on board with us, you can have the choice of just ordering stuff manually, and you don't even have to use the web shop system. You're still looked after. You just you get all your mock-ups done, all your designs. The whole process is very straightforward, kind of like what we were doing with Mickey a few years ago. But the web shop system, essentially, you come on, we'll design an e-commerce store for you. It's completely branded to you. It's not it's not comparative to, the club shops, the online portal space. So it's kind of common within sports clubs like football and rugby clubs. You'll go to Canterbury or Surridge or whatever, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour, and they might have a club shop portal. But that's not really very good for you as a gym owner, because you don't want to have to say to all your members, if you want to buy merch, you have to go to the Nike store, you have to go to Canterbury, then scroll through a load of shops, going past all these other different random clubs that you can then see are all just using the same product, of which there's only about 5 or 6. You're lucky if you're getting about 15 items. And it's just a logo position.
Yeah.
Because these portals aren't, in my opinion, these portals are not set up for the gym owner, or they're not set up for people like a gym owner.
And so
they're set up for the club.
Sorry to interject, but so with what you do, it's like custom to the individual with their merch, where they choose, and it's not got cluttered with other stuff. It's literally tailored to the individual.
100%. Yeah. So it will be branded to you. So your branding is everywhere. We try and make the website look almost identical to what you have. Same font, same colours. We match our menu to look exactly like your menu on your website. So if you've got an About Us page, blah, 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 we'll fill all that in so that when people go on the shop, it mirrors almost exactly how it would look on your website. And then we go a step further and we actually integrate onto our client's URL so that you're not going www.azurasport.com/FMA merch. You're actually going to www.FMA merch. Or shop.fmamerch.com.
Yeah. So
we're not in it.
So it's not a third party. It's completely unique to
exactly
the fitness business. Something I want to talk about, and you touched on it earlier, is you said how a lot of people will just want to sell t-shirts for the sake of selling t-shirts, but when you were speaking about brand and creating touch points with your customer, there's a whole another angle to selling merchandise to help elevate the brand, to help kind of create those marketing touch points when a customer comes through the door. And it'd be great to talk about like how important you feel that is with your experience, like within brand marketing.
Well, with merch, there are hundreds of different options of what you can do. It depends on where you want to create an impact with your members. So I mean, a lot of our clients will do welcome packs.
Yeah.
So that's an element where you don't have a necessary sale that you're trying to achieve. But then you could split welcome packs into 2 or 3 different pieces as well. So what are you using a welcome pack for?
Yeah.
Are you doing it because you're an online coach and you've got to reach someone virtually? Are you doing it because you're a local gym and you want to create a serious impact when someone signs up? Are you doing it for a referral scheme? We've got clients that do a welcome pack specifically for a referral scheme.
Oh, amazing.
So they'll tie in all these pieces into this fully branded box, and you don't have to use the box if you don't want to, but it looks great if you do. And they've got cards in there with QR codes saying, this is a voucher, go and give this to someone else. And again, you're not just being presented with the same stuff or the same, well, pun unintended, box standard approach. You're having different touch points with that client or that member to achieve different results based on what you're trying to do. So the welcome packs is one thing. Milestone shirts is another one. If you've completed specific achievements, events is another good one.
Yeah.
And that's one where you can not only get the brand awareness from it, but you're also getting fantastic team building and customer retention or client retention. But you can also get a good sale out of that because it's a limited edition kind of design, because you're going to whatever event in the industry you're off to, that weekend. That member wants to join in, and they want to join in fully. They want to fully commit. They want to be all branded up so that the photos you get afterwards. We've just had turf games last weekend, and I've seen about 4 or 5 of our clients, some of them winning, up on the full logo backboard, all in the same kit. And if you compare a gym owner that went to turf games and had all that kit done to potentially a gym owner that went to that and maybe didn't get any kit done, there's a very big difference in the amount of pictures that they take at these events. Because our clients have just taken about 20 different images with their members all wearing the same kit during that event. And you can obviously use that content afterwards for whatever you like, but it's that image.
Yeah, and those members will wear those T-shirts when they're out walking the dog. Maybe they're going for a run or just out and about. So you've got that brand awareness in the local area. Then also at those events, you've got the kind of community spirit. Everyone's in uniform, essentially, all together. They're all part of the same pack, essentially, and it really adds that community value. And if you're watching this, that means you're an FMA member, and that means that when you signed up, you received a box, or will very soon receive a box, which had a few fun gifts to start the onboarding process. And if you currently don't have a welcome pack, that's something that I would highly recommend doing. It doesn't need to be to the spec of an entire box with loads of stuff in it, but it could be a pack with a few small gifts with your branding. When it comes to marketing, so most people will assume that marketing is the process of getting clients, essentially. But for me, marketing doesn't stop once the customer's acquired. There's a saying, you don't stop buying flowers for your partner once you get married, or you shouldn't do anyway.
You shouldn't.
Right?
That's the correct answer.
And it's the same thing with marketing. You should consistently reaffirm that they've made a good decision to be with you every single month. And so when someone signs up, and then a few days later they receive a pack, and it's got a bottle, it's got a T-shirt, it's got a card in it with a handwritten note, maybe that really reinforces that I've made a good decision where I'm at. And because a lot of people won't do that, you won't get a nice welcome pack for a pure gym or maybe a lower end service. So that's a way that you can stand out beyond, throughout the service, essentially.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's something that the industry isn't doing enough of, and you can easily achieve a really impactful experience for your member without necessarily having to commit masses to it or to overcomplicate the whole system. You are going to be welcoming that member in, and it's a surprise and delight. You're not necessarily going to go ahead and pitch, if you sign up to my gym, I'm going to give you a welcome box.
Yeah.
You're not necessarily going to do that, but if you signed up to a gym and then within a week's time you got a welcome box or a thank you for signing up shirt or whatever it is that you can fit within your budget depending on your average lifetime client value, then that has an overwhelming impact on your member. I mean, why do you guys do it at the FMA? If I can turn the tables, what do you see in the welcome boxes?
Yeah, so the answer is kind of what you said, to surprise and delight. So it's almost that Disney World experience where you pay for a ticket to go to Disney World and you're excited, but you're delighted by so much you didn't expect to see. And a lot of the time it's the really small details that make the really big difference. No one signs up to your gym or service because they want to get a box. They want it because there's an outcome they want to achieve. Much like if I go to Disneyland, I want to have fun on roller coasters. But then you go through and you see these amazing parades and you see the level of production that they put into it. And then with your fitness business, or with FMA, if someone receives a gift that they weren't expecting, they go, oh, that's really cool. And it's just that little feeling that, oh, that's really cool. That's just an essential touch point that is really important to make. And then, we will send continuous pieces of literature and resources throughout. So it's not just the one box. We may stagger that out over a period of time. Then, at Christmas time, we will send a gift. And for instance, the last year, it was a pair of socks. So a pair of socks isn't super expensive to be able to do, but that's a really nice gift to be able to give to people, but in a very inexpensive way. So you don't necessarily have to give everyone a t-shirt, which might cost a little bit more. You can still get something relatively small that's branded, that's thoughtful, and can just increase that level of value to your clients, which increases retention there as well. So, most people, or a lot of people, I would say, who are doing merchandise right now, do it just for that brand element. And they do that because they want to get the brand out there on t-shirts. They want to enhance the community. And they don't want to deal with the hassle because of that, right? They don't want to have to, again, deal with refunds or change swap sizes or returns or anything like that, because in their eyes, it's not really worth it, right? Because you're just doing that. So you guys essentially just take all that difficulty out.
Well, yes, because you've got the online store if you're using that system. So your members can be ordering anything that you're obviously selling through the store, and they're responsible for choosing the right size. All the right sizes are then, all the right items, have their own size guides. So the chances of somebody ordering something that doesn't fit is a lot lower. We'd always recommend, if you can, just get a few items in your store anyway, or in your gym anyway, like physically in front of members, so that you hang them on the wall, present them, give them a bit more of a reality check over the kit that you're providing. But when it comes to them ordering, the whole process is covered by us. They will put their order in online. It's the same for the welcome packs. It's the same for any of the freebie t-shirts or freebie items that you're doing at all. They will do that process for you. That will not take any more of your time out of your day, because it's all done on the shop system. And then obviously the customer service and the product fulfillment, that's all done here as well. And if there's any problems, they can reply back to their emails, and somebody in our end will reply to them on your behalf. You'll get copied into all of the emails so you can see what's going on, and you can tell that we're doing a good job. But it all comes from the store's domain. So I would be Jason at ABC Gym when I'm replying, because it comes from the store. So you don't have to do anything beyond that point, apart from set a couple of ground rules at the start where you would say, this is what I want the returns policy to work like, or whatever, and we would just facilitate it. You kind of got your own employee.
Yeah. It's like
running the whole thing
without having to hire an employee and have
exactly
the cost
right.
of that as well. So just a few moments ago, I spoke about how a lot of fitness professionals only use merchandise to elevate the brand, increase value, and and the reason why in their mind is that the margin's really small. You're not going to make much money off merch anyway, so you just use it for those brand elements, which is incredibly important and is value in itself and will, in the long run, make your business more money. However, is it fair to say that's a common myth, that you can't make a good profit margin selling merchandise over a long period of time?
I would say yes. I would say we've got clients that have, like you said, both sides of the spectrum. We've got clients that will run some kit on their store, and they'll maybe want to just mark it up by £1 or £2, because to them, they don't necessarily want to make profit on their items. They just want to get their members kitted out in as much stuff as possible, so that the referrals and the eyeballs and the brand awareness is increasing in their local area. Obviously, you've got the whole retention argument, but you can still make really good margin on products. The interesting part is, it depends on what product you're picking, and it depends on how you're packaging that up, how you're designing that. But you can easily we've got clients that make 60, 70, 80% margins on product, and that's on an individual basis. So that's not you having to go and order hundreds of shirts just to achieve a good price. You can get product in at extremely low levels of cost to you, and not actually have to buy the stock anyway, and still make a really good margin on stuff. We've got clients that have got really minimalistic print. So simply by doing something better with your logo, or slightly different with your logo, you can achieve a much smaller print cost and achieve a really good margin. Or you could do a big outlandish print and still probably get a really good margin, because you're creating value in the eye of, value is in the eye of the beholder. If your member thinks something is important or is invaluable, you can make a really good margin, and we've seen it. We've
so
seen a lot
yeah,
of that.
so in short, you can make a good, you can increase revenues and secondary spend using merchandise. It's definitely possible. Again, some people may not want to do that, which is absolutely fine. But if you want to do that, it's definitely possible. I think a lot of people don't try and do it because there's just so much hassle around it. But obviously, if you're using something like you and you've got your own personalized shop and the fulfillment's all covered, then the sort of incentive to do that is much higher. Is what I'd say. What point would you say that, so, we have clients that are in different stages of their fitness business. You've got people that are just starting out. Maybe they're a one-man band. Maybe they've got a staff member. And then you've got the real sophisticated, fully fledged facility, multiple facility, huge team and operations. At what point do you think that people should be starting to use merchandise to elevate the brand, to potentially make more on secondary spend? Because if you're a one-man band, you've got a lot of sessions to run, you've got to be the salesperson, the marketing, all that sort of stuff. Is there still a good time to be able to start using merchandise to leverage the brand and kind of increase retention, do you think? Or do you think people should wait till a little bit later on? What are your thoughts there?
Well, that's a good question. I think the real question actually is, can you afford not to? And if you put all these barriers in front of the decision to commit to something like merchandise, you are limiting what your potential could be. And it's a similar argument to getting people to come into your gym. You would tell them a year ago, you'll be so glad you started today, but you just got to get that person into the gym and get them using the system and building a habit of it. We've got clients that come in at the lowest level possible, like a PT that's literally just got a piece of branding done, hasn't even got a client yet, all the way up to established 20 different location franchises and things like that. So it really depends on your aims with your merchandise, and that's the key, and what you value as your time. So the other big issue is, or the other big myth that you have, is that it can take a lot of time. If you're a personal trainer, you might want to start on the very lowest entry-level spectrum with us, and you could just be ordering things manually. That's totally fine. The system is set up to allow you to do that because you've got no minimum order quantities. You don't have to be on the webshop system. But how much of your time, if you're charging £40-50 an hour as a personal trainer, maybe you're in London and you're charging even more than that, is your time worth spending on managing your merchandise? Or for an extremely low fee, you could just go onto the monthly web shop system and have the whole thing managed for you. You kind of got to put it into that perspective, because at that point you realise there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it. You can fit in anywhere within our spectrum of, we've got a 3-tier level system, and you can fit in any point. You can move up, you can move down, you can cancel if you need to. It's completely contractless. So getting involved and getting into your merchandise early on is always better, in our opinion, because you've built the habits and you've built the system so that when you go to scale, everything just runs smoothly. Rather than, if you had 100 clients, you wouldn't start trying to implement client management software, if you're at that point, because by that point you're already overwhelmed by members. And I think with merch it's the same thing.
Yeah. So from what you said and kind of what I've taken is, regardless of where you are, you should still be looking to surprise and delight to a degree. Maybe you're just not going 100% all in on merch at the start, but you're still doing something, right?
You can do anything.
Is getting like a t-shirt or a hoodie for a one-to-one client going to be like, are they going to be really grateful for that? Like, of course they are. And you can probably per client afford to do more for a client, technically speaking, if you're a one-to-one. And it would probably cost more, obviously, as you get more clients and get bigger. So there's definitely scope to do it. It's just how much do you invest at a certain point in time, and then you can kind of move along. I've seen some gyms where they've got a site set up, they've got merch, but that merch just sits in a cupboard, it's dusting away, and it's the site's there, but it's not really being seen by many people, it's not being used. And when they first started to do merch, they were excited, maybe they did a push, they got some sales in, then they stopped pushing, the merchandise goes, it was dusting away in the cabinet, and then there's not much going on. Do you guys help at all with that? Or maybe a better question is, what would you advise people to do to ensure that they are consistently selling merchandise every single month? Because obviously if the fitness business owner takes her off the ball, maybe it will start to slip a little bit. What would you say in that scenario?
It's a very good question, actually, and it's something that we've been focusing quite a lot on in the last 6 to 12 months. So we've had we've realised that almost with great power comes great responsibility, right? And when a lot of our clients come on board, they realise that they have this shop system and they can put all of their merch onto it. And the really big risk is that they will then just switch off. And they think it's on autopilot. I don't need to do anything more to it. They'll get a load of sales in month 1, a pretty set amount of sales in month 2. Month 3 will be maybe a little bit lower, and then you kind of see that unless they reinvigorate a spike with new product or with any kind of strategy, it can tail off. And that's not to say that you can't effectively manage your sales automatically. You just have to be clever about how you do it. But for us, we've had it's tricky because from a strategic point of view, there's a lot of hurdles in the way of us trying to get our gym member to sell. And we're not really in the market of forcing them to do that. Everything we're doing is about taking the weight off the client's shoulders.
Yeah, for sure.
And then providing that value in the back end for them so that they then see a member walk into their gym wearing something and we know what that feels like for them, and it's pretty big. So we never really want to push our clients to massively chase sales, but for those that are sales driven, we offer a lot of strategic advice on that. And you get an account manager when you come on with us, and they basically find out what your aims are for your merch. And if you're looking to get an actual consistent amount of sales come through, then there are targets and strategies you can put in throughout the year to really hit those targets. But going forward,
That's okay.
Going forward, we are actually working on a new service. I'm not allowed to say too much at this point, but...
Is this an FMA exclusive you're about to reveal?
Oh, it could be. But essentially, we are going to be taking more of a proactive approach for clients.
Yeah.
So we're getting clients saying, this is great, I've saved so much time, so much money, but I want to sell more in general. How do we go about doing this? And what we're going to look into start doing is almost making use of our graphic design team even better to come up with limited edition designs, create a whole campaign for you, present that to a client, and then they just give a go-ahead yes or no, do they want to run it or not.
Oh, amazing.
So that will probably come into play maybe at some point in the not too distant future.
So that side is pending, but even without that not being there, it definitely sounds like there's a bit more personalization to what you do in regards to the relationship between you and who's working with you, rather than just someone ordering t-shirts and then you've got to figure it out yourself, basically. I think that leads me into kind of my next and kind of probably one of the last questions is what would you say the biggest mistakes are for someone to try and do it themselves? Again, like you mentioned the local person down the road, they just order some t-shirts, but that kind of seems like it. They get the t-shirts in, maybe they shift a few, and that's really it. There's not too much to it, right? There's a lot of work that has to go in between negotiating the price of the t-shirt, finding the right material. We've had instances where we got t-shirts and they look great, you wash them twice, they get smaller, they're not very good. So you know, what would you say the biggest pitfalls are of someone just trying to do everything you've described themselves, really?
Well, obviously the number one mistake is that they're not at Azura Sport. So that's the first one you've got to say. I mean, like you said, the way you've just literally pitched that question explains the amount of stress I think that is involved in running the merchandise on your own in this industry. And maybe that is a myth, like we said, with the way that Azura Sport works. We found a way of kind of mitigating all of that stress. But the biggest factors you'll definitely find are, how willing are you to commit hours of your time finding suppliers, testing out product, and investing money in testing out product, to then buying a big bulk load of stock, making sure your artwork is the right size. Most places you go to, they won't say what size. Well, they tell you what size you want your logo, and most of the time you don't really know what size. How does it work on a piece of clothing, and how does that translate onto a mid-layer top like this compared to a hoodie or a really tight-fitting pair of leggings? You don't really get that level of support. So unless you are really on top of your game and you know that, you're going to be paying in mistakes, you're going to be paying in testing samples, you're going to be paying in not really knowing how the designs work. The other big industry favourite mistakes, I guess, is clients potentially or places where they simply want to come on and put a logo on a left-hand chest. Now, it's a bit controversial because there is still a good argument for doing that, and I think when you're doing merch, you need to have it branded, and some standard positioning and designs are key, and they do sell, and it works. But we've had clients that have had really good success from actually changing it up and not necessarily realizing that a client wants to walk around like a walking, talking billboard. Not everyone wants to walk around with a massive t-shirt with your face on it or something like that. And we've had clients that have actually done that, and whether it worked or not is up for discussion. But if we've had clients that have gone down a very minimalistic route, and they've like I mentioned earlier, they've taken almost a very small icon or a snippet of their logo or some element of their brand that isn't actually a logo. They've applied it to that piece of clothing and it's done really well. Whereas a more common mistake is just saying, I want this t-shirt because it's the cheapest, I want that print, my logo on the front and back, and that's kind of as far as the imagination goes with some people.
Yeah. So like the common thing, or the thing most people think of, is like, I'll get my logo, I'll put it on a piece of clothing, like hey. But again, like, you guys can go even further into that in terms of like the kind of edgy designs and making something look not necessarily like a t-shirt of a business, but still elevates the brand in a sense.
Yeah, as long as the branding still comes through, you're getting the same value across that you're trying to do, and as long as the designs work, your member loves it and people are buying it, what's the actual problem?
Yeah.
But if you want to just come on and stick a massive logo on the front of a very basic t-shirt, how do you feel like you're communicating that to your members? If a member wants to buy merch, do they want to buy the cheapest t-shirt that you can use? They probably don't. They realize when they're paying a slight premium anyway for custom branded stuff like this, they want to know that it's good quality stuff. That's why we don't stock Fruit of the Loom. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on your podcast, but we just flat out don't do stuff like that. And I think that's another pitfall that people do. They'll invest thousands of pounds into stock, and we've seen it, thousands of pounds into stock, and it's just the basic product. I'm not going to name any more names, but the basic product you can get your hands on with a very cheap print or decoration process, and it is exactly as you just said. It's sitting there in a box, taking up their retail space, taking up their stress. It's obviously taking up all their money as well, and obviously you can do a lot better than that.
Final thing to touch on is I know you mentioned, you have a number of FMA clients that you are working with already, which is why we're here today and having this conversation. What sort of stuff do they use you for? So we've gone over an array of stuff, but like an example, what's kind of an example of a client kind of using merchandise to increase their brand and maybe revenue simultaneously, or maybe just one or the other? Like, what's a good sort of case study, if you will, that you can think of that of someone that's using you guys?
Well, I'd probably go back to Mickey at MZ9 if we're going to go with an FMA client. So I mean, they've come along the entire journey with us. So they've been there when it was a case of ordering before the web shop, doing things for events, but not just recognizing that you can create some t-shirts for an event and that's it. They applied quite a lot of different kit. They've then done other events like rugby camps and things like that, where they've had kit designed for that. They then launched the web shop with us. They then got loads of sales through that. They've then also gone on and done like a nutritional recipe book. So that's something that we started doing about 2 years ago. So we're not the nutritional experts, but we'll take any of the content that you've got, and you can buy packs for this online.
Oh, and you made it into a physical book.
Made it into a physical book.
Oh, okay. So this goes far beyond t-shirts and merch and water bottles. There's actually like physical books and printouts for you guys. I assume make
100%
look pretty good. Yeah.
So there's a physical recipe book that they had made by us. And not just made, it was designed by us. It was obviously made. It was then stocked by us, so they barely had to hold any stock. They don't have to, take up all their living room with all this product. And then we actually managed all the fulfillment for them as well. So, that's another approach. They've then done 6-week challenge shirts that they gave out for people that were signing on to a particular challenge. They've done countless other events afterwards, and you really see it in the events. The events is a really good element of it because to get really good success out of merch, one of our top tips is always scarcity and like a limited edition factor to something that you're producing. If you go off and, who's your favorite music artist?
Me. Oh, you're putting me on the spot. Oh, my goodness.
Who would you go and see at the stadium somewhere?
Who would I go see? Someone. Well, this is, I wouldn't say it's my favourite, but on the bucket list, I'd probably say like Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's someone I'd love to go see. Yeah.
Okay, so if you were to go and see the Red Hot Chili Peppers, and you wanted to buy a piece of merch afterwards, if it was the same piece of merch every single time, do you think you'd buy a shirt every time you went to see them?
Yeah, I see.
You probably
you
wouldn't.
You wouldn't go right there. Yeah.
But by having different designs, that's why merch is always different with people in the music industry, and that's a really good. I would give that as a piece of advice to any gym owner that's looking at doing merch. Is actually look at how the music industry has used their merch, because that whole industry has gone through an incomplete revolution. There's a really good book by Nicholas Lovell on the curve, and he talks about how brands need to realize that they have like a fan base, obviously, and the same with the gym, they'll have fan base, but you have a distinct curve on how much each of those members of your fan base want to invest in you, or invest in your brand, or invest in experiences with you. So the music industry, as we know, absolutely lost all of their revenue from the actual sale of the music, because things like Spotify came along and music became free, and you either had a choice of fighting that and eventually kind of dying, or embracing that as an artist and finding additional revenue streams through that. And merch is a huge thing for that. So you'll find that you've got 15 million listeners on Spotify as your top line audience. The curve will then dip down, and you've got 1,000 people that will want to spend £10 on a shirt. Then you've got 500 that will want to spend £100 with you at an event. Then you've got 100 that will want to, do something else even more valuable, like buy a signed CD when it comes out with a poster and something else, and they'll pay £200 for that. All the way down to somewhere where you've got about 10 or 15 people that will pay £50,000 to have you at their kid's birthday party. And with merch, it's the same thing. If you can apply the understanding that you can create something of limited or of scarcity, of high value merch, deliver that to your members, and obviously the value will increase depending on what you're trying to provide. Your members will want to do that, and they'll want to invest in that, and you have to really look along that curve and think, how many of my members are at this point, how many of my members are at this point, and where are they going to spend the money? So I think Emsodine have done a good job with that, because they've applied lots of different products and lots of different service throughout the whole journey.
Yeah, I love that, especially with like the scarcity of the products. And I think you see a lot of, I'm not an expert in this field, but you see like a lot of fashion brands do this. They release, it could be a t-shirt, it could be a shoe, but there's limited stock, and then they release and it sells out really quickly. So they're not just selling the same item for a year, they're releasing a limited edition version of something, and then they're stopping the sale of that, and then they're going to bring something new. So kind of circling back to where I said, how do you keep things fresh in terms of selling the merchandise? The answer is probably to just not sell the same thing consistently, because as you said, there's a limited amount of people that will buy that. Once they've done it, then you're not really going to get too many more sales from that. But if you release, like a summer fitness event shirt, and then the next year it's a different style, and then you've got the winter game shirt and it's slightly different there, then people will actually want to start potentially purchasing more and more often. So having that variety and having the means to be able to create that variety will be massively helpful. That was really interesting, that last bit you said. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, I think you summed it up nicely there.
Yeah, amazing.
That's a good point.
Perfect. Well, we'll wrap things up there, but thank you so much for coming down.
Thank you for having me.
If you want to find out more about Azura Sports, about getting your brand on all different types of merchandise, and being able to increase the value of your clients, be able to increase the brand awareness, and even actually make profit on selling the items, there's a button below where you can find out more. Jason will also be at our next upcoming mastermind event, so if you do want to have a conversation, make sure to go ahead, say hey. But again, there's a button below where you can find out more. It will link to your website and any other resources we want to pop down there as well. Again, thank you for watching, thank you for coming down, and we'll see you guys soon.
See you later.